What happens when the truth surges past every barricade, shattering the fragile bones beneath official stories and leaving nothing but raw reality in its wake? History is filled with moments when rosy assurances collapsed under the weight of undeniable events. From the fall of Saigon to the unraveling of the Soviet Union, officialdom has always tried to shield the public from uncomfortable facts, until, suddenly, the truth became too massive to hide. Today, governments repeat time-worn reassurances. The front is holding, the situation is under control. Yet on the ground, the opposite unfolds, a relentless, accelerating collapse. Just as in the waning days of the Warsaw Pact, carefully crafted statements cannot disguise a deeper malaise. Entire sectors are buckling under pressures they can no longer withstand. The events at Kupiansk and Liman are not isolated misfortunes. Instead, they mark the crest of a tidal wave signaling systemic breakdown. You can see the evidence not just in strategic maps, but in the urgent signals echoing from the front. Command posts abandoned in chaos, their maps and communications left behind. Hasty withdrawals scatter units across unfamiliar fields. Reports emerge of convoys streaming west, not as part of orderly rotation, but in desperation, fleeing encirclement. In one dramatic instance, a battalion commander described how, overnight, all lines of communication went silent, leaving his unit to navigate back through hostile territory by memory and hope alone. The information war, once a reliable shield to prevent panic and control perception, is now battered by the sheer force of events. The distance between what we are told and what is actually happening has become a yawning, unbridgeable gulf. The fallout is not simply a tactical defeat. The collapse of the official narrative is happening in real time, and the world is being forced to watch. Consider, for example, the fall of Mosul in 2014, when the city's defenders insisted on stability right up until their positions were overrun and the truth exploded into the open. If we accept only the polished headlines, we risk missing the earthquakes that rumble beneath our feet. At stake is not just a patch of military ground, but the very foundations of sovereignty, security, and the notion of truth itself. Understanding what is truly happening is no longer optional. It is vital for our safety, our investments, and our grip on reality. In 1986, when the Chernobyl disaster struck, official statements downplayed the threat until radiation clouds drifted across Europe, revealing the cost of denial. Now, we must strip away the comforting illusion and confront the raw facts of a front in freefall. But how did we reach this tipping point? To grasp the true scale of this unraveling, we need to look deeper into the realities obscured by official accounts. Only then can we comprehend the stakes on this fractured front. Why are official voices so quiet? What shadows do they cast over the truth? And what do they risk by shrouding reality in silence? In past conflicts, from the Korean Peninsula's seesaw battles to the final days of the Berlin Wall, information management played a key role in shaping public response. But the longer the silence, the more dangerous the shock when reality finally breaks through. On television and in daily briefings, commanders describe stability and control. Yet at the front, everything is disintegrating. Whole battalions fall back under relentless pressure. Vital ground is abandoned, and retreats unfold in silence, hidden from the public and even from many officials. The image of order is a mask. Underneath, chaos reigns. In one recent example, an entire brigade vanished from official reports for several days, only to reappear after being decimated and reorganized far from the original battlefield. Soldiers on the line grapple with shifting orders and unreliable information. Reports are warped as they climb the ranks, and trust dissolves. Each day, the gulf between headquarters and frontline widens, leaving units stranded and morale battered. This erosion of trust is reminiscent of the final phase of the First World War, when frontline troops and high command became so disconnected that orders arrived too late to make any difference. This unraveling is not a single blunder, but the result of a culture built on self-deception. Lying up the chain is expected, not exceptional. Commanders massage numbers to protect themselves, Superiors echo these distortions, and the facts disappear beneath layers of comforting fiction. When reality is denied again and again, the whole machine grinds toward failure. We saw this dynamic at work in the final years of the Vietnam War, when body counts and victory claims became meaningless against the reality on the ground. Layered atop this is a perilous reliance on Western technology. Encrypted radios, satellite feeds, and digital reconnaissance are vital tools, but they are not truly under national control. When foreign satellites go dark or networks collapse, entire formations are left deaf and blind, unable to move or fight. This dependence is a glaring weak point, and adversaries know it. In the Gulf War, for instance, the coalition's overwhelming technological advantage proved decisive, but it also highlighted how vulnerable any force is if its digital lifelines are severed. This collapse is not random. It is the inevitable price of years spent twisting facts, outsourcing key tools, and shunning uncomfortable truths. As the facade crumbles, the real disaster becomes visible. Lives lost, infrastructure ruined, and the chance for recovery slipping away. In recent months, local infrastructure, bridges, supply depots, water stations, have been targeted, further compounding the collapse and leaving civilians stranded. If denial deepens, the fallout could be catastrophic. More lives and cities will be lost. Trust in leaders and the fabric of society itself are at risk. The longer truth is suppressed, the harder it will be to rebuild and safeguard the future. The lessons of Bosnia and Syria show us that when official narratives diverge too far from reality, society's fracture and recovery can take generations, if it happens at all. But the consequences do not end at the front. The contagion of falsehood and collapse spreads far beyond the battlefield, reshaping neighboring societies and threatening the stability of the entire region. History offers countless examples. The Yugoslav wars, triggered in part by the collapse of neighboring states and the spread of instability, became a warning to all who ignore the interconnectedness of regional security. What drives a nation to turn its classrooms into training grounds for future wars? In the Baltic states, especially Lithuania, fear is no longer a passing shadow, but a daily institution. Across small towns and bustling cities, new bunkers rise beside playgrounds, and children barely 10 years old are learning to operate drones, not for play, but as part of their official lessons. This is not temporary crisis mode, it is the new normal. In Vilnius, for instance, drone simulation labs are now as common as computer classes, and teenagers routinely participate in weekend defense drills. Civil defense drills, once rare and unsettling, now blend into the everyday routine. Children are taught escape routes before they memorize poetry. Families fill closets with survival kits, replacing stacks of school books with canned food and bottled water. The ever-present tension pushes waves of young people to seek stability abroad, draining communities of hope and energy. In Latvia, emigration rates have spiked as young adults look to Sweden or Germany for a life less defined by fear. This militarization of education blurs the line between protection and provocation. Teachers, once mentors in history and ethics, now demonstrate camouflage and trauma first aid. Psychologists warn that constant vigilance breeds anxiety and warps reality, turning nurturing institutions into engines of fear. The very places meant to foster growth now deepen a sense of siege. In Estonia, several school counselors report that students as young as 11 are exhibiting symptoms of chronic stress, nightmares, and social withdrawal. Officials maintain that these changes are essential for national survival. Yet beneath the surface, the fabric of society is fraying, anxiety is rising, trust in public life is eroding, and families feel ever more isolated. If this trajectory holds, the Baltic nations risk losing their youth, draining their spirit, and stumbling toward conflict rather than preventing it. The experience of Israel offers a parallel. Decades of militarized education have built resilience, but at the cost of pervasive societal tension and cycles of emigration. But perhaps the gravest threat is not in bunkers or classrooms. It lies unseen, in the digital sphere, where the battle for technological sovereignty has already begun. As physical defenses multiply, another front expands in cyberspace, one where the rules are uncertain and the stakes potentially greater. Here, the fight for truth and control may decide the fate of entire nations. Can any nation truly claim sovereignty when its armies see and hear only through the borrowed senses of another power? Recent revelations have laid bare an uncomfortable truth. The entire chain of command is tethered to Western satellites and foreign-controlled communication networks. Every order, every maneuver, each heartbeat on the front lines pulses through infrastructure governed from continents away, well beyond any national reach. The analogy to ancient Rome's reliance on mercenary troops is apt. When critical capabilities are outsourced, so too is independence. The danger of this reliance was exposed in the chaos of 2024. When key communications abruptly failed, entire divisions went blind and deaf in the field. In those crucial hours, positions vanished, units broke apart, and defeat arrived, not due to the enemy's prowess, but because the digital lifeline was severed without warning. A brigade tasked with holding a vital bridge found itself unable to receive orders or call for reinforcements, leading to its encirclement and capture. Veteran officers now speak openly of this digital leash. As one former commander put it, no artillery strike, no drone mission, not even the simplest patrol escapes indirect foreign oversight. What is presented as partnership is, in reality, pervasive supervision, shaping every tactical choice, every moment of risk and response. The history of the Cold War reminds us that even the most advanced alliances are fraught with hidden power dynamics and dependencies. Lacking their own satellites, both military independence and political agency dissolve into comforting myths. Security becomes a fragile illusion, maintained only while Big Brother keeps the systems alive. Should that protection vanish for even a single night, the entire defense architecture would teeter on the edge of collapse. In Afghanistan, when Allied air support was withdrawn overnight, entire provincial capitals fell within days. Demands for indigenous space and communications capabilities are growing, but harsh economics smother these hopes. Building a sovereign satellite network from nothing would cost trillions and take decades, far beyond the promises of any current leader. There are no shortcuts. The trap was set years ago, and any escape must be measured in generations, not mere election cycles. Consider the European Union's Galileo project, which took over 2 decades to reach partial independence from American GPS. The stakes are existential. To remain dependent is to risk losing not just sovereignty, but the nation's very survival. A single decision made in a distant boardroom, a solitary flip of a switch, could extinguish autonomy overnight, leaving society exposed, disoriented, and utterly powerless. The lesson from Venezuela's blackout in 2019 is clear. When external actors control the grid, the entire country can be plunged into darkness in moments. Even as these risks become undeniable, official narratives downplay vulnerability, insisting control remains firmly at home. But the gap between propaganda and grim reality is widening, and the consequences threaten to spill far beyond the battlefield. In the information age, perception can shift in minutes, and entire economies can be upended by a single cyber attack or communications failure. How do you recover trust and build true resilience after years spent inside a web of self-deception? The answer is as unsettling as it is necessary. By confronting the hardest truths, whether about failed strategies, political missteps, or the calculated manipulation of facts. No society, or its leaders, can hope to reform until it faces what has gone wrong and why. The post-apartheid reconciliation process in South Africa is a testament to the transformative power of truth-telling, even after decades of systemic denial. Genuine reform always begins with honesty. For too many years, official stories have glossed over collapsing systems, from the chaos at the front lines to rot deep within government. Without a clear-eyed reckoning, every attempt at change is just theater. Military leaders, the press, and politicians must all admit where they failed, however painful. Only on a foundation of reality, not illusion, can new strategies survive? In Japan, after the Fukushima disaster, transparency became a rallying cry for rebuilding public trust. Technological autonomy is now a line drawn in the sand. Recent history shows how entire countries become paralyzed when they rely on foreign satellites, communications, or surveillance, and that support evaporates or priorities shift. Outsourcing sovereignty, renting vital technology, does not make a nation stronger. It only creates new points of failure, and in crisis, those weak spots can prove fatal. The experience of Iran, building its own internet infrastructure after years of sanctions, demonstrates both the immense cost and the necessity of technological independence. Resilience is not about retreating to bunkers or fueling panic. True resilience means shifting from fear-driven reactions to preparation rooted in reality. It demands investment in critical infrastructure, robust local supply chains, and the freedom to solve problems independently at every level. A society able to feed itself, repair its own networks, and make its own decisions stands a fighting chance against any shock. Switzerland's policy of stockpiling food and maintaining civilian shelters offers a model of pragmatic, long-term resilience. But none of this is possible without a revolution of thought. Open debate and critical thinking are survival tools, not luxuries. Leaders must invite dissent, even when it threatens official narratives. Local innovation, whether in technology, civil society, or defense, should be cultivated, not smothered by bureaucracy or ideology. Only a society that adapts in real time can sidestep the slow death of managed decline. The Silicon Valley model, with its embrace of failure and rapid iteration, stands as a testament to the power of adaptive thinking. The alternative, ignoring these lessons, denying the need for autonomy, and continuing to rent out sovereignty, guarantees only deeper disaster ahead. When trust collapses, so does agency. And when agency is lost, hope soon follows. No government restores confidence by clinging to comforting lies. The true cost of delay is counted in wasted opportunities, squandered resources, and ultimately, lost lives. After the Arab Spring, countries that failed to adapt quickly found themselves mired in prolonged instability and economic decline. This is the crossroads every nation now faces. The noise of propaganda can only muffle the knock of reality for so long. What will you choose to hear? But what does change look like on the ground, in the lives of those forced to adapt as systems break down? The next step is not just national. It is deeply personal. In Ukraine, families who once trusted government broadcasts have learned to rely on underground networks, encrypted messaging, and direct observation to navigate daily life. When truth and sovereignty are in jeopardy, will you accept the story you are given, or will you chase the answers yourself? The challenge is both timeless and urgent. In East Germany, the Stasi's dominance over information crumbled not because the regime relented, but because ordinary people began to question, compare, and act. Now, everything depends on your ability to cut through the noise. The collapse on the Eastern Front is not just a battlefield loss. It signals a crisis where reality itself is uncertain. If you embrace soothing falsehoods, you become part of the cycle that is tearing societies apart. In Rwanda, the cost of misinformation was measured in hundreds of thousands of lives, proof that truth is no abstract ideal, but a matter of survival. Consider, how much of what you believe is based on your own direct experience, and how much is shaped by polished statements? Each day, trust in institutions declines, not only on the front lines, but in every walk of life. Where honest journalism should stand, propaganda seeps in, while dependence on foreign technology leaves nations exposed and fragile. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, misinformation and delayed communication cost lives and deepened the crisis. Your discernment matters more than ever before. Governments and media may control the flow of facts, but it is your questioning, research, and discussion that can push reality into the open. Do you notice the fractures in the story? Can you sense the growing anxiety as entire populations try to make sense of chaos? In the information age, The power to compare sources, seek out independent reporting, and verify claims is a form of civic defense. Today, the dangers of misinformation are tangible. National sovereignty, the safety of millions, and even your own future are at risk. Investments, freedoms, and your understanding of the world all hinge on your willingness to dig deeper than the headlines. If the collective mind falls into confusion, recovery could take generations, if it comes at all. The lessons of Yugoslavia, Venezuela, and Lebanon warn us that when confusion reigns, rebuilding trust is a monumental, sometimes impossible task. So what practical steps can you take to guard against collapse and confusion, both as an individual and as part of a community? First, cultivate information literacy. Seek multiple sources for every major story. Compare perspectives from different countries, political affiliations, and independent analysts. For example, when reports on an event differ sharply between local and international outlets, dig into primary sources or eyewitness accounts. Second, support independent journalism and local reporting. Subscribe to trustworthy newsletters, fund investigative projects, and amplify the voices of those closest to the story. In Poland, the rise of reader-funded newsrooms has provided a crucial counterweight to state and foreign influence. Third, invest in community resilience. Build local networks that can share information, resources, and support in times of crisis. Community radio, neighborhood watch groups, and mutual aid societies have all helped fill gaps left by failing national systems. After the earthquake in Turkey, it was these grassroots networks that delivered aid and accurate information when official channels faltered. Fourth, advocate for technological autonomy. Push your representatives to invest in local infrastructure, from internet providers to satellite development. Even small steps, like supporting local tech startups or volunteering for digital literacy campaigns, help build long-term capacity. Estonia's e-residency platform and cybersecurity focus offer practical blueprints for digital sovereignty. Finally, practice critical thinking in every sphere. Question easy answers, challenge comforting narratives, and be willing to revise your views as new evidence emerges. Encourage debate at home, in schools, and at work. The societies most resilient to shocks, like Finland, with its focus on education and open dialogue, are those that treat critical inquiry as a civic duty. Will you be a passive listener, or will you demand answers, compare perspectives, and push for truth? The struggle for reality does not end at the front. It happens in every conversation, every post, every belief you hold. You are not just a bystander. You help decide what comes next. The future is shaped not by the loudest official voices, but by the quiet persistence of those who refuse to be misled. In the end, the question is not whether the truth will emerge. It always does, sooner or later. The question is, will you be ready when it arrives, or will you be swept away by the collapse? The crossroads is here. What you choose to see, question, and believe will shape not just your fate, but the fate of nations.